we'll go ahead and get started because that's our promise. Welcome, everybody. It's Monday, March 28th or Tuesday, March 29th, depending on where you are. And this is Jim and Jory with our weekly open-hearted practice group. Today we are Transforming Conflict, Part 2. We started last week and we'll continue the exploration this week. And I feel more energized in the moment than I did about an hour ago. And I didn't sleep so great last night and I feel a little bit better. I always notice this happens when people start arriving, seeing your faces, and somehow it really gives me some juice to be with you. How are you doing, Jory?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm glad to be here too. It really fuels the connection, sense of belonging. It gets a little lonely out in the middle of an island, and even in our own homes sometimes. And so it's just really sweet that we get to come here together, and I see familiar faces and feel that sense of connection. So welcome, welcome. I hope you also have a sense of belonging being here, because from my perspective, you belong, and I'm glad you're here. And I'll put it back to you, Jim.
Thanks. I think everybody that I'm noticing is, well, I don't know who the call-in user is, but welcome, whoever you are. And I'm imagining more people will arrive. We'll go to small groups at least twice today. So if you want to practice in your own language, please let us know that by changing your name. And like Makiko, or Minako, sorry, Minako did. She put JP, that stands for Japanese. And so if you're willing to practice in another language, that can be helpful. I know Minako doesn't speak very much English, although she's really coming along. Her English is better than my Japanese. And and if you don't want to practice, then you can put the equal sign in front of your name. And that just lets Jory know when she's making the practice, the little breakout rooms, that you don't want to practice in a breakout room. I strongly suggest that you do practice there. And because that's where most of the learning is. Although I'm sure you enjoy hearing from Jory and me, the deepest learning will be when you're practicing with one another. So really encourage that.
Yeah, we have a saying, which I don't think I heard you say. The person doing the speaking is doing the most learning. And although we sound like maybe we're authorities, we're learning all the time when we run classes. So.
And given how many words I use each week, I'm certainly learning a lot here, if Jory's theory is true. So I'm really happy to be here today. We will practice the 3 different modes of nonviolent communication today, which means self-connection, empathy, and honesty. Empathy being the listening part of NVC and honesty being the speaking part. And we'll start here with a self-connection exercise. It's the same one that we did last week. I'll go through it a couple of times while Jory makes the groups. And it might be fun to stand up to do it if you'd like. I'm going to stand up because I've been sitting at my desk a lot today.
Plus, it's also a way of really tuning into it in your body. It really anchors in a whole different way, I find, when we stand up and actually move into different parts, as opposed to just do it from a heady place.
Yeah, and so we're going to make sure you have a place where you can take one step behind you. A small step is fine. And we'll start with what we call the 0 step, kind of getting clear on your intention to be here right now. So just notice that you're breathing. It'll help you to get present. See if you can leave your luggage at the door, so to speak. Just let go of whatever else you were working on before you got here. And then on the next breath, just consider what's your intention for being here today. In other words, what needs are you hoping to meet? Then just imagine that you can open to outcome, that you can kind of relax into this present moment and let it unfold in whatever way it unfolds. Be willing to just be the observing witness, living in this presence. And we're going to practice what we practiced last week. We call it the conflict dance or the flow dance. And it involves just taking some steps with your feet just to kind of anchor your experience in your body to remember these different parts of nonviolent communication. Now we're going to invite you to remember or imagine a low level intensity conflict that you have had recently, something that you imagine you could stay present and learn from. Maybe it's even a conflict that you've already done the repair work with, already given yourself empathy, maybe connected with the other person. And just bring that to mind and imagine that this other person is sitting or standing in front of you. And just notice how your body feels right now. And notice the environment that you're in. You can just briefly look around, allow your head to accompany your eyes as you see that you're in a safe place. Yeah, there's a conflict here, but conflict is natural. You've got skills. You can see there's a way out if you need to go. You can always just let the exercise go, forget about it. So here you are in front of this other person. A conflict is present. How do you know? Just notice how you know that there's a conflict. And as you notice what's going on in your body, maybe there's a sense of constriction or a thought, a judgmental thought, something like that, then just take a small step back. And notice what happens when you do that. If you're just sitting there, you don't have to take a step back. You can just lean your body back a little bit. It only takes about 1 inch to let your brain know that you're stepping back. And notice how that is. Most people report more perspective. The conflict gets a little bit smaller. And then get curious. You could, if you wanted to, you could put your hand on your chin like the thinker and just lean in. And as you lean in with wonder and curiosity. Be curious about this conflict. Who needs what right now? Start with yourself. What are you needing in this moment? Once you have a guess about your own needs, you could get curious about what do you imagine the other person is needing right now. Maybe it's even the same thing. And then check, are you willing to step forward to engage with this other person and talk about it? If you are, just take a step forward. If not, just hold your ground. That's fine. And now here you are back where you started. And there's a new moment. Maybe you say something to them. Maybe they say something to you. You observe what's happening. You observe the environment. You observe the other person's body language. You notice what's going on for you. Then take a step back again and use this as the opportunity to connect even more deeply with your feelings and the feelings that you notice in the room. Maybe they're the same, maybe they're more intense, maybe they're less intense. And to get curious again, who needs what right now? It's a new moment. And check to see if you want to keep going and engage more with the conflict. And if you do, then just take a step back forward again. We'll go through it one more time. This is a new moment. So you let the luggage go from whatever's already happened. You're staying present. You're staying connected to your own needs. You're staying connected to the needs that are alive in the room. You're open to outcome. You notice that. Then take a step back. Increase your perspective. Especially notice what's going on in your own body. Your body's like a barometer that is letting you know how much pressure, how much emotional pressure there is in the moment. And get curious about who needs what right now, in this moment. It's always, for me, best to check in with my own needs first, then get curious about the other person's needs, and then check, is there a request? What might help right now? Maybe it's empathy. I just want to listen to the other person. So step forward and then invite the other person to speak. What's going on for you? And you just listen and notice. Maybe they talk for a little bit. You're just present, not hearing what they think, instead listening for their feelings and needs. And then take a step back, kind of take the wider view for a moment. It's like you're riding the elevator to the top of the giraffe's neck. So you have a much clearer view from back here. Again, attune to your own body. Get curious, who needs what right now? What are your needs in this new moment? And what are their needs? Maybe you then step forward and your intuition is to reflect. Are you feeling, and make a guess about their feeling? Or are you needing, make a guess about their needs? Or maybe is blank important to you? And they respond. You notice that, you take it in, you take a step back. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. You lean in. Who needs what right now? Take a step forward. Now do it at your own pace. Notice, step back, lean in, step forward. Do it a few times. While you keep practicing, I'll put it up on the screen so you can just see it, so you don't have to listen to my voice. Just do it at your own pace for a minute. And then with the next breath, just let it go. Just let the image of the conflict dissolve back into the place wherever imagination comes from. Check in with your body one last time. What did you learn? How's your body right now? No expectation that anything be different, just noticing. And get curious, did this meet any needs for yourself? If so, celebrate that. If not, mourn. Not every exercise works for everybody. So you stay connected to needs. Then together, we'll all step forward back into the small group, into the large group, I mean. And Jory probably has made groups for us. Are you ready yet, Jory? Nope. You're on mute.
We both unmuted at the same time. Yes, I actually waited about halfway through to try and get as many people in as I could, but several people have joined, and I think it's going to be about 15 people. The other piece is that I tried to make guesses at another language that someone else generally prefers to be in, but if you did not put that on your name, I'm not so great at remembering. So just come back to the main room, change your name, and write the language you would like to be in. Specifically, what we have is Japanese and Chinese. We haven't been asked for any other languages so far, but I will move you around as fast as I can and get you in there. And Jim, how long is the breakout that you're suggesting?
Yeah, let's do this for about 10 minutes plus a little bonus time at the end.
Sure. I always put an extra 2 minutes there so that you can finish what you're saying and prepare to return.
And then
And again, for those who are new here, if it says closing now, that means we're moving into the 2-minute period of getting ready to come back to the main room.
And the prompt for what you connect with in the small group is maybe you say your name, where you're from, and your response to this exercise. And when you're speaking, that's your chance to be practicing honesty, authenticity, whatever's alive in you. You liked it, you didn't like it, you think it could be improved, whatever's alive in you. And when you're listening, which is 2/3 of the time, then you're listening in silent empathy, just listening for the feelings and needs of the other person as best you can. And we'll come back here in about 12 minutes.
Righty. Now here we go. I'll open them up. look at all those faces coming back. Yeah, welcome back to the large room. And this is a great opportunity for you to share anything that's up for you about what we did last week, or anything else that will support you in being present for this week. We welcome that.
And if you'd like to raise your hand, you can do that by going down on the bottom of the screen. There's a little happy face that says reactions, and you can use that to raise your hand like Patricia just did. Go ahead, Patricia. Oops. Here you go.
Yeah. Um, it's really, it's very interesting to notice that conflict is, oh, I don't even know how to say what I want to say. Um, if I'm really present to what is happening, and if I feel that I am in conflict with someone, if I'm really, really present, I know that I never want to respond to somebody else from the same consciousness that that conflict came from. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do tick for tack. I choose not to do that. So that if I stay in that presence of spirit, how do I choose to respond? Then the what seemed like conflict dissolves because I'm not there. My response I know is going to be different.
Yeah.
So I don't need to spend time on listening for needs and feeling of the other person.
Yeah.
Because if I say what is true to me, which is do no harm to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Sounds like you're really living from that empathic presence without
Yes.
having to try to
Yes.
be empathic.
I have
You just put aside all your luggage. You're just present. And in the presence of that quality of empathy, the conflict just dissolves into
yeah.
connection. Yeah. That's inspiring to hear. I'm glad to hear that.
And it dissolves. It might not dissolve into connection, but it dissolves into I'm not interested in taking prisoners.
Right.
I take no
Yeah.
prisoners.
I get it. I get it. It reminds
That's
me,
what it dissolves into.
there's a trainer named Kelly Bryson. Maybe some of you have worked with Kelly or know of Kelly's book, Don't Be Nice, Be Real. And Kelly, I don't know the other ones, but Kelly has, I think, 4 noble truths of anger. And the third noble truth of anger is if I respond with anger in the presence of a conflict, I'm almost guaranteed not to get my needs met.
Mhm.
And that sounds like something that you've learned along the way, Patricia.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Is that complete?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have something you'd like to say? Siva.
Uh, yes, I have a question about what you just said about Kelly. I don't know her last name. The statement that you said, I want to ask about what you said, that if you respond in anger, you're almost guaranteed not to get your needs met.
Right.
And I think, this is what I think, I'm asking for somebody else to think it, whether it's true or false. And that is, I think it's because we naturally learn by mirroring each other. So however you're out, especially as a little child, all you know is how is your world, and you mirror whatever your world is. So my question is it because of this natural behavior of mirroring?
I think it is. I think it's even deeper than learned behavior. I think it goes, I think that's part of it, but I think it might even go to the level of our nervous system, to our neurology. There is something called mirror neurons. So we have these mirror neurons are constantly scanning for resonance with other human beings that we're with. And I think that the kind of the way that I hold it is the person that's vibrating at the highest frequency, so to speak, is likely to have more influence on the system than the person operating on a lower frequency. So if you're angry, for me, that's a low level of frequency compared to being present, open, calm, and alert. And if you're scared, you're also not totally present. You're worried about the future. If you're ashamed, you're stuck back in the past, and so forth. And so that's why we always emphasize self-empathy first, to do whatever we can to help ourselves to get back to calm and alert as best as we can in the presence of conflict. And then that gives the other person's neurology, the other person's nervous system, something to attune to. And so that for me is sharing power. We're the ones that are sharing our power of calm, alert presence with the other person and supporting it. It may not have an immediate effect, but even if it had a 1% effect, wouldn't it be worth it? That's kind of how I look at it. So I want to just take as much responsibility as I can to
You said the word resonance, and I have the book by Sarah Payton,
yeah.
called Your Resonant Self.
Yeah.
So is what you're just said, is that based on Sarah's teachings?
Yeah, Sarah is for me an important teacher. I learned a lot from Sarah, and so I like this notion of integrating some brain science into my understanding of NVC. It just helps me to get clear on what I can do to support my nervous system in creating connection. And I like the distinction she makes between empathy and resonance. Empathy is being with another person, not feeling the same thing that they're feeling. But resonance is very relational. It's really like I can empathize. Like if someone was to walk across my front yard over there, I can empathize with them without having any sense of relationality with them. But right now with you, I see your face. I'm responding to the nodding of your head. There's a sense of resonance, and I look at everybody else on the screen. I see if they're still with us. So I'm growing a sense of resonance with all of us and make sure that we're all resonating, that we're all attuned. And if they're not, then I want to address that. Yeah.
She's giving a 10-session class every Wednesday from, I think, forget what time it is, but
yeah, I'm pretty connected to her because her main assistant lives in my house. It's our daughter Jaya, and so we were really pretty connected to Sarah and her work. Thanks, Siva. Let's if you're ready, we'll move on to Rob.
Yeah. Hi. I just I feel resonance, with the first step of stepping back, and in the example I had, I felt hurt and stunned. So because like feeling like self-preservation or something. So I was sort of naturally in that state of, well, wasn't present though. I guess when you're talking about stepping back, you want to be present, and but in the example I had, I was more stepping back, but because I was hurt and not connected though. So anyway, so maybe it's not exactly what you're saying then.
I'd call it a step in the right direction, Rob.
Yeah.
The neuroscience of that stepping back is it was coincidental that I learned this piece of neuroscience while we were developing this dance. And this is maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago now, but that when we take a step back, and even have it in English and maybe in other languages, there's this idiom, I was taken aback, which is a quality of being surprised. And so there's this natural kind of movement of the head or of the body when we're surprised by something. And conflict, no one expects conflict. Conflict's almost always a surprise, unless you're a professional mediator and you walk in and expecting conflict. But even then, you're surprised by how the conflict unfolds. So when we take that step back, it it helps to shift us from our limbic system, which is the emotional reactivity part of the brain, and shifts our attention to the prefrontal cortex, this big thinking part, and what's also called executive function, where we just have a lot more choice. And that's actually biologically engaged by taking the step back. So it's so natural what you do, especially when you're triggered. It just makes so much sense that this is actually this dance is designed to mimic our natural reactions, but turn them into more choiceful responses.
I think you said you put in the chat, but I didn't see it in the chat, the different steps. And somehow you're not the speaker view. I get somebody else when I go to speaker view.
Huh, that's interesting.
I get Patricia.
That is very interesting. I want to be the speaker.
Yeah, I think it may be that you have pinned her or something. I don't know.
I haven't pinned her. Nope, nobody's pinned. That's
No, not you, maybe Rob. So.
That I pinned her. Oh,
could be. I don't know.
There we go. Yes, that's it. Okay.
Jory fixed it. Yay.
Ah, see, I'm a techie sometimes.
Yeah, a Zoom pilot. Thanks, Rob. Is that complete?
Oh, could you put that in the chat? You know, the different steps?
Oh, yeah, the steps. Yes, I will. Okay, anybody else have anything you'd like to share before we practice some? Okay, in the chat are the 4 little steps. We'll probably look at them again later, too. Oops, I just sent it to Jory. How effective is that? Let's try it again. Here we go. Notice, step back, lean in, step forward. Go ahead, Maureen, and then Sarah Joy. Maureen?
I just wanted to acknowledge that I appreciated the exercise this weekend, last week. And I like the fact that you reviewed it last week, and I like the vision of the giraffe crawling up the giraffe's neck. And I like the process of going back and forth to continually reevaluate and stay in the moment to keep the process fresh. So it's a useful tool for me. I'm thanking you for using it.
I'm really glad to hear
Yay. I'm glad to hear it worked for you.
Yeah, me too. And that's the thing that's kind of tricky when we're first learning NVC. We almost always start with an observation, and we are because of the way we've been educated, we think that's a static thing. There's one observation, but each moment is a new observation, and that's what I was trying to point to, is the experience that observing is a dynamic process. Sarah Joy?
Well, thank you for doing that exercise. I liked it as well. And it gave me the practice to have a little more time doing it 4 times or doing it over and over, to get each part a little better. If I were to ask for some improvement or change, for me, I came in tired as well as Jim. I had a couple of nights I didn't get good sleep, and it went too fast for me. So, the first couple of times I did it, I was a little bit lost. And, so if you maybe just slow down or pause in between the parts, that would be really helpful for me.
Thanks for the feedback, Sarah Joy. I appreciate that. Patricia.
A question came up during our break, our small group, because somebody came in after you did your presentation. And the question of the new person was, do these steps apply when you are not part of the conflict, but you're observing a conflict?
They do for me.
Yeah.
They do for me because my body reacts to other people's conflicts.
Yeah, it's really, anytime that you're reacting to a conflict, whether you're directly part of it or not, it's about regulating yourself.
Even when you're an observer of a
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it if there's a reaction inside of you, and that would support you in being more present in the moment.
Yeah, you can even practice this. I don't know if you're a TV watcher, but
No.
or a movie watcher, but you know what makes stories is conflict, right?
Sure.
And so we can practice this in the presence of any kind of a story. You can do it while you're reading a novel
Mhm.
or listening to a book. You know, you can notice it and go through the process. The most important, if there's only one part of the dance that you do, for me, it's the third piece. Who needs what right now? That for me is the transformative piece. That's how I transform conflict from my moral judgments of right and wrong to my value judgments about who needs what. So if it's the only thing you remember, that's the one to remember for me. Okay, Gail. Oops, I see your lips moving.
Yeah.
Oops, you're something. Yeah.
All right. I got the tail end when you were saying climbing up the giraffe's neck, but I wasn't sure. So I just want to make this connection, relating it to our nervous system. When we feel stimulated or activated, sometimes we can't mobilize. So I liked when you step back. But what I wanted to add is if you still felt stimulated by just turning your head to the right and the left and orienting to the room, it activates your parasympathetics, just as when you said, take a deep breath. So you can start moving up the ladder. If you're going to say the draft to the heart, that physical movement can be very, very helpful, realizing where you are in your sympathetics.
Absolutely.
And move yourself up.
That's great.
Yeah, and the stepping back is not even necessarily a physical thing. And whatever supports you in stepping back or making some space is helpful.
Yeah, I think if I was to, I think we designed this dance before I knew as much about neuroscience as I know now, which is about 0.001% of everything that's available. But nevertheless, I would probably add that what you're talking about, Gail, is called orientation, and it is the most effective grounding technique that I've ever discovered. Yesterday or the day before, Jory and I were sitting on our lanai eating breakfast. Lanai is the Hawaiian word for porch. We're sitting on our porch eating breakfast, and we watched our cat walk across the yard. And her name is Deep. Deep would take 5 steps, stop, and look around. Then she would take 3 steps, stop, and look around. And we watched her for a good 10 minutes. And so that's where we got it from. We got it from our animal ancestors, because we all want to be safe. And this is how we activate that part of the nervous system to let us move from being reactive, which there's very little learning, if any, that happens when we're in a reactive space. But when we climb up the giraffe's neck into calm alertness, then we can learn something new from the conflict. So I really appreciate your bringing that forward, Gail. Anything else for you?
No, I'm complete.
Great. Zohar, and then we'll practice.
Hi. So a question. What do you do when you can't guess what are the needs of the other person?
Yeah.
And you feel that you do want to say something, because if I'll just say something in that direction, it will shift something in the other person's energy, but I just don't know. I have no clue. I feel like I'm blank at that moment when I try to think of what are the needs of the other person.
Yeah, just to be able to acknowledge that there's pain sometimes, or something really matters, or and don't assume that you need to guess right either.
Mm-hmm.
you know, because, oh, believe me, when people are upset, they have no problem correcting you. So it works just fine, but
Yeah.
just even making a guess, not to quiz, but just, you know, showing that you're attempting to connect can be a very powerful process of building that bridge of safety and connection between you.
So even saying something like, I feel like there is something that is very important for you about it can all.
Or just
or-
saying, this is important to you, you know, to really just meet them, take yourself out of it and just meet them.
Yeah.
Or without too much of a question in it, you know, like you're quizzing, but, you know, is it around connection or, you know, just like an open question there.
Mhm.
And that lets them know that, you know, you're doing your best to connect with them. And that's what really matters, not that you get it right.
Yes. Yes.
I've even had people name something that, you know, I was so angry. I really want the freedom to do what I want. And, oh, you really want freedom? No, it's not about freedom. And they come up with something else because they've already moved on. So
Yeah.
it's about expressing care.
Yes, I understand that. I think it's something about me that, so sometimes I find this exercise really beautiful, but I feel like I'm going to need a week to just be in the exercise because I need to spend a lot of time in my stepping back. But during the conflict, even if I will not solve the conflict, I would still like to even just make a small gesture of connection, even if we decide to leave the conflict and get back to it later.
Yes.
So at that moment, when I'm still not fully connected to myself, and I'm still not fully got all the self-empathy I need, and I can be just available for the other person, I feel blank. I feel like, oh, I do want to say something to build a connection and not just say, I can't talk about it right now. Can we talk about it later? And yeah, so what you offered sounds like a good start to something to try. Yeah.
Yes, sometimes it's that vulnerable honesty with a statement that there's an intention to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's a good place to kind of transition, because for me, one of the things that makes NVC mediation and NVC's approach to conflict resolution distinct from many other methods is that resolution is not the goal. That sounds kind of crazy for me to say that, but for me, resolution is the effect. The goal is connection. So that's where I'm putting all of my attention during conflict, when I'm being calm and alert and doing my best job as a giraffe, is I'm putting my attention on connection with a trust that the conflict will naturally resolve once there's connection. And that's not something I ask you to believe. I don't want to create a whole new belief system here. I invite you to consider that and test it in your own life. And maybe even compare experiences that you've had when you're trying to resolve a conflict and everything is very solution oriented, and compare that with an experience in your life when connection was your goal. And there was a quality of trust that through connection, resolution will be the natural effect. So we'll have a chance to practice that right now. So today is a good chance to start testing this theory. So we'll start with, as usual, an observation. So think of a conflict that you've been in or witnessed, and write down the conflict. And actually, before I do that, I want to say something else. somebody else brought this up earlier, so I wanted to share this because we always invite people to think about a kind of a low-level conflict. And so I wanted to define what I meant by that and why. So I share a different screen with you. So this is a little chart that shows on the left-hand side of this little chart, you can imagine this is your skill level. And so down here at the bottom would be like, I don't consider myself very skillful at all at handling conflict. And up here at the very top would be, I don't know, someone who is super integrated with their ability to stay present in conflict. And all of us are somewhere probably here in the middle. And so the curve relates to how intensity impacts skill level. So if you start with, in the analogy that I like to use is learning how to surf. So when you learn how to surf, not that I know how to surf, by the way, I've never surfed, but I've watched people learn. They always start on the beach. So that's zero level of intensity. You're not even on the water. And you're basically learning what the surfboard looks like, how it has a fin, and maybe you're standing on the board on solid ground. So there's very little intensity. And then once you get ready, you go out and you start paddling around a little bit, and it's calm seas. So you learn how to balance on the board and so forth. And then when you're ready, you start moving into ripples, kind of small waves. Here in Maui, when they're teaching surfing, they start with waves about 1 foot high. And I call them ripples, and that's big enough to surf. And you get the experience of learning how to surf that kind of a wave. Likewise, when we're working with conflict, we're learning how to surf conflict. We're learning how to stay connected to our feelings and needs and the feelings and needs of the other person as we navigate conflict. And then as you become more skillful, you're ready to go surf on waves. So right down the street from our house is another beach called Ho'okipa. And Ho'okipa, the waves on a good surfing day, they're in the 4 to 6 or 8 foot range. And so that's a pretty big challenge for surfers. They have a lot of fun out there, and it's really great to watch them. But it takes a lot of skill. If somebody went from level 0 to level 3 on the first day, it would be some kind of a miracle. This is like a period of time that might take weeks or months to be able to grow your skill level to be able to surf at Ho'okipa. And then for the real pros, you might want to go to Jaws. Jaws is also very close to our house. You could, if you want to be amazed, you can look that up on YouTube later. Put surfing Jaws into your YouTube search and watch these guys and gals who are able to surf on 60-foot waves. So these are huge waves, as big as a 6-story building, and they're going about 60 miles an hour. And it takes us extreme amount of skill, lots and lots of integration and practice to be able to surf on that. And then finally, nobody really can surf a tsunami. And tsunami is what you go to a therapist for. When you need support in order to surf the conflict tsunamis in your life, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a professional mediator, some sort of a conflict worker will help you to surf. You just need lots of support. No, it's really hard to get that level of skill to be able to surf a tsunami by yourself, even though people try it every time there is a tsunami. But anyway, so that's the skill level. So we'd like to invite you to stay in this calm seas and ripples area, or maybe even surfing waves. You choose the level, you assess your skill level, and maybe you've been doing NVC for 10 years or whatever, and so you feel pretty confident you can surf a wave. And so you might pick something there, but realize we're only going to have 10 or 15 minutes to do this. So maybe you want to just stick with ripples or calm seas for practice. And that's to support learning, and because we just don't have a support system in place to catch people if they end up getting swamped. So this is about becoming more trauma aware and being able to support people in actually where they are. So now, go back to the to the original observation again, and pick a conflict that you want to work with today. And describe the conflict in this form. A wants, and fill in the blank, and B wants. A being one person in the conflict, maybe it's you. B being the other person, although it could be a conflict that you want to work with involving two people that aren't you. Doesn't matter, you get to choose. A typical one that people sometimes practice with is A wants to go out to the movies. B wants to stay home and watch Netflix. That'd be the quality of observation that we're looking for, just that brief. A wants one thing, and it's always going to be a strategy. B wants another thing, a different strategy. And yes, you could use a conflict with yourself. It's a little bit easier if you do it with other people, maybe. But feel free to experiment for yourself. So I put my observation into the chat. Next step would be for you to do that. Anybody who wants to. And keep it confidential. That's why we have A and B. You can use different letters of the alphabet if you like, but just two anonymous human beings. And let's put a few of them into the chat as the next step. And maybe we'll give you some coaching. I'm enjoying the ones that are here so far. A loves the film and B decimates the film. I think you probably mean criticizes it. So a conflict of opinion. Oh, hi, Jennifer. What a nice surprise. A wants to talk about gender issues. B doesn't want to in that space, or possibly even at all. A wants to smoke pot. B wants to be present with A and finds it a challenge to do so when they have smoked. A wants to spend hours making dinner. B wants to get takeout and take a hike. Yeah, these are some good conflicts. Oh, yeah. A wants to share what's in the news. B wants to avoid the news. Jory, are any of these lighting you up for our practice?
I'm open to what you would choose, Jim. I wasn't actually reading them, sorry.
Okay.
Just responding to some requests that were just made. to me.
Okay. A wants to talk. B doesn't want to talk. A wants, somebody wants to take away my water bottle, and the other person wants to keep their water bottle. like at a venue, like at a concert or something.
Yeah.
There's one from the news last night. Chris Rock wants to tell an off-color joke about Will Smith's wife. Will Smith wants to defend his wife.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably would want to play that differently than it played out. He went and slapped him. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'm reading them now. Thanks for calling my attention. I like the one about news and to avoid the news,
Yeah.
because I think that's not uncommon
Yeah.
in relationships. It's not alive really totally with us, but I certainly know people who go, don't talk about that.
Yes, especially in our current age where the news can be so polarizing. So I'm going to set my timer. Jory and I are going to do a demo here. And so Jory's going to choose which role she wants to play, and I'll play the other role. And we'll do it for about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless we finish earlier. And so, Jory, which role are you going to take?
Oh, I don't want to know about the news.
You don't want to know.
I want to step into something new for myself.
Okay. All right, great. So I'll play the role of I'd like to share something with you. So I'll open the conflict. I'll open the door.
So I want to be clear, since I'm not clear at this point. Am I a giraffe or a jackal?
You are just authentic.
Okay.
And I'll play giraffe as best as I can. And you just you can kind of be reactive. Does that work for you?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start the timer now. This actually happens every morning in our house, but not with the conflict part. But so I'm sitting there reading the news while Jory's making breakfast. And I say, hey, Jory, I just read something in the New York Times. It's really interesting. Would you like to hear about it?
No.
No, you're not feeling interested in it today?
Yeah, I don't want to have that level of distraction at this point. I just really don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, so
it's more than I can deal with right now.
I see. So you're kind of feeling overwhelmed with trying to do the other preparation, and you want to focus on that?
Yeah, and I can't really take in all of the drama that's happening, and I'm using drama and as if I'm judging it. It's just too hard on my nervous system to at this point during breakfast, making breakfast, to hear about some of the things that are going on around the world.
Yeah. So it sounds like focus is really important to you right now. You want to just focus on breakfast.
Yeah, and there's a quality of self-protection in there, just as I even feel the tears behind my eyes as I start to touch into some of what's happening. And I need to keep my focus if I'm going to make breakfast, and take care of my heart too by saying no thank you right now.
Yeah, so you really want to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's so interesting though. I mean, I'm just so intrigued. I think it's gonna light you up to hear it, because I think it's some really good news, and I think it's so hopeful. And so I'm wondering now, hearing a little bit more of the context, if it's something that you'd like to hear about.
Thanks, no thanks.
Yeah, so you're feeling pretty, maybe it's even irritating that I keep bringing it up.
It's getting a little edgy in this moment, because I just really want to be able to focus on what I'm doing. And it's shifting my attention, and I'm not as good at multitasking as I used to be, and I don't want to mess up our breakfast.
Okay, I think I got it. So would it be okay if maybe we check in about it later? If it's still alive in me, I'll ask you later if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, it works for me. I'll just bookmark it here on my iPad, and then if we remember later, maybe after you're finished preparing breakfast, we can talk about it while we eat. How would that sound?
Okay, we'll check in. Okay.
Okay, and so for now, I'm catching that maybe what you'd like to do is just be quiet for maybe the next 15 minutes or so you can really focus on breakfast. Am I catching what your request is?
Yes, would you be willing to be quiet now?
Yes, I will be. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I will pause there. Make sure this doesn't go off. Okay, so now, now your job, you guys all just observed this conflict. And so first notice how your body is right now, having been in the presence of Jory and Jim navigating a conflict. Maybe jot yourself a note about your own experience of being present or not during that conflict.
I wonder if you even hear it as a conflict. I'd be curious.
What did you say, Jory?
Oh, I was just opening up to the possibility that they didn't even hear that as a conflict. I'm just curious.
Yeah, possible.
I mean, I could feel it as a conflict in me as I said it, but I don't know if how that went across.
Yeah.
Love to hear your feedback, Patricia.
I did not hear it as a conflict.
Uh-huh.
I heard it as an avoidance of a conflict. Right? You're very skillful, Jory, your skillful way of answering, and Jim's irritating way of insisting.
Persistence. That's why I wondered, because I did feel it somewhat as a conflict, and I was trying to avoid it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there's some more opinions in the chat, which are interesting. Some people heard it as a conflict, some not so much. So the second question to consider is, what did you notice that either Jim or Jory did or didn't do that you sense supported connection? What did you do that supported connection? And just write down.
Janet unmuted herself, so maybe she'd like to respond to that. I don't know if that's your intention to be.
I think it's
What's an accident? Sorry.
Okay, I'll mute you. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, they're writing some things down.
Oh, okay.
This is another chance for you to practice observing. What did Jory say or do that contributed to connection? What did Jim say or do that contributed to connection? Leslie said, I felt Jim was being key. I think it means kind. And so I like that evaluation. I certainly was doing my best to be kind. But what did you see me say or do? I love that you kind of tuned into your own body, but I would love to hear feedback about what I. Nikhilananda says, both listen to the other's needs. So that's getting closer. But how did you know that we were listening to one another's needs? Someone says.
In other words, what did you see or hear?
Yeah. Someone says there was some empathize. So I'm guessing someone means that there was a quality of reflection. Jim kept guessing Jory's feelings and needs. That's an observation. That's what we're aiming for. So that would be what we would. That was the skill that we covered a couple months ago called empathy, and what we just did during the exercise earlier today, where we were focusing on who needs what. That's what I was doing. I was trying to figure out what Jory was feeling and needing, and I'll also stay attuned to myself. I guess Jory's needs, naming the different strategies that were offered, the reflection back. You acknowledged her feelings by asking whether she was overwhelmed. Yes, there was acknowledgement.
And Maureen writes, both calm. And it's interesting because I could feel myself getting less calm as he was persistent. but I made sure not to come to settle myself before I opened my mouth to respond in a calm way.
Yeah.
So there was some of that inner part. Yeah.
Yeah. Nikhil Ananda noticed that neither of us talked while the other person was speaking. He put it as neither interrupted the other. Corey, I think Corey's observation is really important. Jory told Jim that things were getting edgy, indicating that she was near her capacity. Jim tried to explain his motive, reflecting what was heard before saying their own feeling and need. Siva says, I felt that you both knew the NVC game of life rules and were consciously trying to play by the rules. Jory didn't exacerbate it by inquiring into his motive, even though he was plainly irritating by persistence. Yeah. So I want to share.
I don't have a sense that I was playing by rules. I had a more of a sense of an intention to both support connection and also protect myself if that's what I needed, to honor my own needs through it.
Yeah, so I
How
see.
does that differ? How does that differ from playing by knowing and playing by the NVC rules?
Yeah, for me, if it's rule-based, it's a totally different game than I'm playing. It's not about the rules. It's about connection for me. Now, the strategies that may sound like rules are actually the ways that I have found that are most likely to build connection and make sure that I'm heard and I hear the other person. So it's just, I use the word differently.
Well-
The idea of rules actually is a bit disconnecting for me because I don't want to play by rules. I want to play by connection.
This is a really important point, Jory. I think that playing by the rules is the way for humans to actually connect in peace. I think as a very, very positive idea.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I would, rather than call it, maybe it's just a semantic thing. Rather than calling them rules, I might call them requests. And because the thing I don't like about rules myself, now I'm a rule follower. I've always been a very good boy, right? I mean, since kindergarten, before kindergarten, I have been a rule follower. But in order for me to learn those rules, somebody had to be the rule enforcer. And almost every single time that a rule was enforced in my life, I suffered the brunt of that punishment. And so I'm longing for a way to reframe the same energy, and that's why we call them skills rather than rules. So that I take your point, and I think it's a good point, Siva. So let me share this screen with you and highlight some of the skills that you guys noticed, and maybe some that you didn't notice. So you couldn't see my zero step. Zero step just referring to this idea that my intention is to connect and not to get my way. In this case, I was open to outcome. It was okay with me if Jory wanted to hear this news story. It was also okay if she didn't want to hear it. So I was coming from zero. That would be impossible for you to see because it's inside my own consciousness. But I did start with inviting. I said, hey, Jory, would you like to hear about this news story that I'm excited about? So I started with an invitation, and then I went to empathy. So whenever we make and inviting is a form of a request, and we did a whole class on request consciousness, and you can go back and review that if you'd like. But as soon as we make a request or share our honesty in any way, we move to empathy. I went straight into listening mode, and I was actually leaning in and wondering, what does Jory need now? So that happened. Jory was doing a lot of honesty. Jory was saying what she was feeling, what she was needing, and she was making some requests. So that was happening. You also didn't see self-empathy, because again, that's inside someone's consciousness. But I'm guessing that as Jory reported that she was feeling a little getting close to capacity, as someone noted, and she was able to report that because she was connected to her own feelings and needs. And that's basically what self-empathy is. I was doing self-empathy along the way. I wanted to make sure that I was staying here in zero. And then toward the end, I empathized with Jory's request that I thought could also meet my needs. For some reason, this was important for me to share with her. And I wanted to share it. I didn't want to give up on my need to share this with her. I thought she would really enjoy hearing it. But I caught that she didn't want to hear it now. So I said, how would it be for you if we talked about it at breakfast, if it was still alive in us? And so that was me requesting action. She said yes. And then I said, thank you. Some form of thank you. Great, that would work for me. And along the way, there was also some, my invitation in a way was a request for feedback. I said, how would it be for you if I shared this news article? So we pretty much covered all these skills here, except for this one, requesting confirmation, which would have been, I might have said something like, if I was really intent on sharing this and caught any inclination of willingness, I might have asked Jory to reflect back what she heard, why I was saying this, what my needs were. But I wouldn't do that as a quiz. I would reveal my needs to her. I would say something like, this is just so vital. I'm really worried that we won't remember to do it. And I think you'd really enjoy knowing this. So what are you hearing is important to me? And then Jory could say, sounds like you really want to remember this. Thank you. Yeah. So these are some of the skills. We don't have to go over all of them because we've been going over all of them for the last 20 weeks. But this is just another way of looking. And look, there's no order of things. This is a dynamic process. I didn't start, except for these two here. This tended to be orderly. I start from zero and I begin with an invitation. And then I go to empathy. That's kind of like the opening steps in a conflict dance involving another person. I start with zero, open to outcome, invite the connection, and go to empathy. And then from there, it becomes very organic, moving with life. Okay, so, wow, it's already 5 minutes till the top of the hour. So go ahead, Zohar.
It looks like to me, I mean, when I'm looking at conflicts, that the most initial and important thing in order to transform a conflict is to be able to somehow connect to this zero step. Because it looked to me that even though you were experiencing a conflict and Jory was about her getting into her capacity, it still felt very safe. Nobody looked panicked or under threatens or anything, and I feel like that's the major thing about conflict that make it so hard to move forward, and that we just throw more oil on the fire when it starts, is because we lose this self connection so quickly.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I could feel the annoyance rising in me, and I owned it. It wasn't about him, but I then persisted. You know, that's a really big part for me in this work, is owning our own feelings and noticing that it's my need, it's not their fault. So that's really a big part of it.
Will you be willing to share a little bit of that inner dialogue that you had with yourself
Mhm.
while you were having the dialogue with Jim?
Yeah, I don't. It's hard for me to even remember what I said before. I was just experiencing it. It's not so much the inner dialogue, although I think earlier on when I was doing NVC, there would have been more of that, like, oh, darn, why doesn't he just hear me? You know, and maybe there was a little bit of that when the frustration first started to rise, but I'm so programmed to go back into what is it about for me and how do I want to express it? You know, what am I saying yes to as opposed to what I'm saying no to? Is that helpful, Zohar?
So you just ask yourself, what am I saying yes to? When you start to feel that you start to be a little more cranky and not in harmony with what's going on, then you just ask yourself this question: is that
That can be very helpful. Yes.
Yeah, it's reminding me, Zohar, of a time when the conversation didn't go like this, and I don't even remember what I don't know what A wanted and B wanted, but I'm sure I was A and Dre was B. But I did not do my 0 step, even though I was an experienced. This is probably 5 years or something like that, and I got I was attached to the outcome, and I literally stomped my feet like a 4-year-old in frustration. And so I remember standing in the living room, stomping my feet, and that's what woke me up. I said, "Wow." This is what I said to myself. "Wow, Jim, you are really attached here. Why is this so important to you? Is this worth fighting over? Let me just check." And just talking to myself in that way was enough to slow me down. And so that the next thing out of my mouth was probably something like, "You know what? I'm feeling so triggered right now, and I really want to get my way. And I'm pretty sure that the next thing out of my mouth is not going to help. So I'm going to go take a 15-minute break, and then I'll come back."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very familiar to me as well.
Yeah.
I've lost my capacity. I need a little space, but I will come back. That's always the important piece, because there's enough abandonment programming in all of us, or many of us.
Yeah.
And I want to protect the relationship. So I acknowledge that.
So let's go to small groups for 14 minutes plus 1. So people can talk about the applicability, how you might apply any of these skills with your conflict. And if there's only one thing that you focus on how you can support yourself in openness to outcome. Let that be your first kind of thing to talk about. How can you support yourself in openness to outcome? The second thing would be, what could you say to invite the conversation? Putting it in the chat.
Yeah, it's really, how can you become open to outcome that you're looking at? How do you support yourself?
Yeah. What could you say to to invite? I'll use the word invite to keep it short. And then the third thing is, what would you say if the person said no? What would you say or do if the person said no?
Yeah, I was getting close to it. We didn't do that part.
Oh, you said no very, very skillfully about 5 times, and I was persistent.
That's true. I didn't use the N word though.
No, not that one. The scariest word in the.
But it was getting close.
Yeah, I could tell. Okay, so yeah, we kept it in calm seas. So it was pretty much a level 1 conflict. So those would be the three things that you could talk about. How can you be open to outcome? What could you say to invite? And what would you say if the person said no to your invitation?
Okay.
We'll see you back here in
And-
15 minutes.
Oh yeah, let me set the 15-minute thing.
14 plus 1.
14 plus 1. Thanks for reminding me. All right, opening up the rooms. Yeah. Welcome back. Yeah, the gang's all here. No, it's still coming. I'd love to hear what worked for you first, and then, I'll make it an or. What worked for you, or what questions do you have? Go ahead, Beth.
I see your lips moving, but I don't hear your voice yet.
No, and she's muted again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, anyway, I just wanted to thank Suda. She was in our group and she guided us through these questions. And when the last question about what you would say when you hear no to your invitation, and our first thing was gratitude for honesty, and then acknowledging that I heard you. And then you rephrased you had a different request, like you said, to say, okay, if we could talk after while we're eating breakfast, or you kind of modified it. And I was wondering, what is that step called when you?
I would call it mutuality, or looking for a new strategy that could contribute to both persons' needs.
Yeah, and we often call it dogging for your needs, not just insisting that it be a particular way, but holding the need precious and seeing if there's a way that it can still get met here.
Okay, it was kind of like a modification is what I was picking up. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, okay, she says no to this strategy of me telling her now. Wonder if she would be open to me telling her later. That would meet my need for expression and sharing this piece of good news, and it would meet her need for focus now and connection later.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And then Zohar?
So we talked about in our group that sometimes it looks like the conflict was resolved, but one side had to give up or give in their needs, and then they might even feel suppressed. So there is one way to see it, that they chose their need for connection on their other need, but if they still feel suppressed, then they will still have hard feelings about what happened, and they might carry this for really long time, and we'll need to bring it back from the past and open the story again and again. So just if you have something to say about that.
It's very possible that those things happen, and actually, if you're lucky, they'll let you know, and then you have another conversation. The challenge is when that happens and you don't really know, because the intention really is connection. And well, let me specify. Generally, what we've been talking about, the intention is connection. The reality is sometimes someone walks away and I don't really have a sense of that I want the connection, and so I let that be. I might just acknowledge that this was hard for them or whatever, but we don't have to take it on. Of course, if it's your husband or your spouse or your kids or, you know, your boss or someone you're with all the time, the relationship matters, and you might put some energy into that. Yeah, thank you, Solar.
And
So
I'm going to put
that
something.
answers your
I'm going to put
question?
something. I'm going to put something into the chat here from a handout that we have in our mediation class, because I think what you're noticing, Zohar, is critical for transforming conflict. To be on the alert for compromise. You know, usually we're told, and I think politically it's a good idea, but in connection, not such a great idea. Be on the alert for compromise, caving in, or other forms of submission. And NVC conflict resolution is a no compromise model for exactly the reasons that you're saying, Zohar. I want to stay in the dialogue as long as the other person is willing to, because I don't want to submit. If I submit, we will both pay later. Submitting, I'm defining as I give up my need in favor of Jory's need. Every time that has happened, we have both suffered. But when we stay in the dialogue until we find that mutual strategy, nobody has to suffer anymore. So we keep dialoguing until we move past compromise to connection.
Yeah, and that suffering often looks like resentment or that sense of withdrawal, you know, those kinds of things where the connection between us is damaged.
And so the way that it might look is, let's just say that Jory and I are having this dialogue about me reading the news. And so Jory, play it out that you submit. All right, you. So Jory, can I? You know, this is such a cool article. Can I just read it to you?
Oh, okay, just do whatever you want.
Right. So now I'm alert to compromise, and now I'm on red alert. Oh, okay. So this actually is almost like me stomping my feet in the other story. Now, rather than her stomping her feet, she's actually fleeing the conflict. She's freezing. And so I say, oh, uh-oh, this is my self-empathy. Uh-oh, I'm going to get what I want, but I'm going to pay for it later. Is this really worth it? It's not worth it. This is not the world that I want to live in. I can actually feel myself starting to cry because it's happened so many times. So then I say, wait a minute. I'm catching that you're submitting here, and I take it off the table. I take it off the table until I can work in my head and get more open outcome. I don't want you to submit. How do you feel when you hear me say that?
Yeah. And as I am playing the role of the submitter, my sense of connection with him in that moment is really falling away. He doesn't really matter anymore. I either feel resentful or scared, and I relate more to the resentful part in it, but it could be also fear. And I can feel the squirminess in my body. Your body, our bodies are such good resources for knowing whether whatever we've just done is going to lead toward connection or disconnection. And so for ourselves to be aware of that, and for us to be aware of it, when we're aware of it, how it is when we do it, then we'll become more aware of when someone else does it.
And one last
we've
thing.
managed what, 42, 44 years, whatever it is together, you know, because we're not willing to live in a world of submission.
Yeah. And so we make a distinction, and this is not an official NVC distinction, I don't think, yet, but there's a distinction between surrender and submission. Now, these two words mean the same thing in English, but we make it distinct because they point to two different qualities of consciousness. When I'm in surrender, the way that we're defining the word, I'm connected to needs. So I'm like, let's just say I have what maybe looked like I submitted. Okay, well, I'll just tell you the story later. That wasn't a submission, it was a surrender because I was connected to her needs and my needs. I was surrendering to the needs. I wasn't giving up on my needs. And so she's not going to pay the price for me giving up on my needs. I didn't submit, even though it might, to an outside observer, it might have looked like it. So I want to pause our discussion here and
Yeah.
get back to the answers and just back to the questions after we do our normal, what we do at 5:25 p.m. here in Maui, and say a few things. That works for you, Jory?
Yeah, I just know I haven't heard from Sarah Joanne sometime, so I was going to.
We'll get right to it in just a
later.
second. So
Okay.
first, in the chat, you can pay attention here, and you can copy these out of your chat. And so, or just click on it. If you're not on our mailing list and you want to be reminded of these classes and other things that we offer, you can easily sign up by clicking that link. Secondly,
Copy and paste, yeah.
Secondly is this link. This is where we put the recordings from this class, and most of the previous classes are available at our website, pathwaystoliberation.com. Thirdly, I wrote a book called Pathways to Nonviolent Communication, and love for you to buy it. Or why not buy 20 copies and give them away to all your friends? And it's a fundraiser for the Center for Nonviolent Communication, which is the organization that Marshall Rosenberg started. And this link will take you to lots of different ways where you can order the book, including Amazon, but some people don't like Amazon. My preference is you order it from your local mom and pop bookstore. Support local businesses, and they know how to order it. All you gotta do is give them the title. And then if you want to donate for the class, we do all of our work by donation. You can donate directly to the Center for Nonviolent Communication through Network for Good. And if you're a US citizen, taxpayer, you might be able to get a tax deduction for that, because CNVC is a nonprofit organization. If you give the money to us, then we will find an NVC project that we enjoy. In fact, this morning I got a request from a Brazilian man who is living in Europe, and he wants to go to an IIT, the International Intensive Training that's going to be happening in Finland in later this summer, and he just doesn't have enough money. And so I'm going to do some fundraising for him to see if we can find a way to make it affordable for him. He's doing great work with NVC, and I'm very inspired by his work. So I want to support him. So that's the kind of thing that I'm on the lookout for, is a person or a project. So that's the end of the commercial.
There's one more commercial, and
Okay.
I put jory.youcanbook.me in there. If you would like a private session, I do it by donation. And with that, I think we're complete.
Okay, let's go to
And-
Rob next.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. I just, have this frustration. With that zero step, not being attached to the outcome, I come to this and I really want to get some empathy, and most of the time it works, and then some of the time it doesn't. So like this time it didn't somehow, with the skill level of the group or myself or the chemistry. So, that disappointment, and, that's all. Just, I come here, it's my best chance for in-depth empathy for the week, and I'm not in a zero place.
Yeah. I don't know whether or not you're in zero, only you know, but maybe you're just mourning, Rob. Maybe you're just mourning that
Okay.
this need for empathy is not met yet. Yeah, and maybe an idea would be to get creative about other strategies other than this group. Maybe there's somebody in this group who would enjoy connecting with Rob, even after the group is over right now, and going to a private room and listening to Rob. That would be a really powerful thing. Would you?
You can put that in the chat so that I can make sure to make that happen here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually asking if anybody else wanted to do that, because I'm going to be moving people around. If you're the people who are in your group are no longer there and you want to stay on, I'll make sure that people get moved into rooms. And I also want to just catch Sarah Joy before we
Yep.
go.
You've been so patient, Sarah Joy. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that for me, I really loved your zero step. And I need to remind myself throughout the communication to return to that place. And especially when I'm with my son. And I know when I'm not listening to his needs is when I'm talking too fast and going to my needs and what I want to show him or tell him or teach him or whatever. And then when I think about the zero step, it's like I can slow down and then I can listen to his needs and find out that we both want each other to listen more without interruption. And we both have a lot of the same needs. But he wants more independence. And so, and probably less advice or fixing. And I want connection. And so, it's interesting. I can't get both of those at the same time sometimes. And I need to, really hold back on the advice. He's an adult already, I have to let him feel grown up, and he's giving me advice. He can give me advice now, and I can accept that. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah Joy.
Thank you. Nice to hear your voice. And with that, I'm going to open up all the rooms. If you